What's up, guys? It is your boys from Two Shoe Sports back again, having some fun today with another live draft. David, what do we got in store?
We're coming at you with another 10-team PPR Yahoo draft. Today we got the 6th pick, a little bit different. We haven't quite done this one for you guys, so as we get started, let me remind you, follow us on Twitter. If you like the video, give us a like, subscribe. We're going to be coming at you weekly, even daily, probably for the next little while as the season gets ramped up, giving you the best fantasy football advice. Always reach out, whether it's a DFS question, who to start, who to sit. And as we get ramped up for our weekly fantasy show, week 1, we're going to be dropping some, different mock drafts, some top 10, some lists, just getting started. Up until now, it's been a little difficult because before training camp starts, you're just throwing darts when you're like trying to guess who's going to be here, who's number 2, who's this, who's that. So we've hesitated in putting out a lot of rankings because we know they're going to change. And instead of changing our rankings 100 times, here in about a week, we're going to hit you guys with our solid Two Shoe Sports draft guide that is guaranteed to lead you into your fantasy football playoffs this year. So if you want all that information and more, make sure you give us a follow. For now, let's get to the draft. What are we looking at?
All right, well, with the 6th pick, it's an interesting territory. You could get somebody in the top that maybe reaches for a receiver, and one of these tier 1 running backs could fall to us. If that's not the case, then I'm pretty sure, we're going to feel comfortable with one of these tier 1 wide receivers that they have rated so high.
Yeah, as you can see with the 6th pick in their Yahoo's rankings, we are projected to get David Johnson. If that happens, we're going to be stoked. We have David Johnson, with our number 5 pick overall. And honestly, we think he's worth the value. Is he going to go? Is DeAndre Hopkins going to fall? That's the scary point when you start looking at it, because Melvin Gordon's that next running back. And as much as we love a first-round running back, with the 6th pick, you're reaching for Melvin Gordon. You're reaching for Nick Chubb, Le'Veon Bell, some of these guys that we like. And so if David Johnson and these other 4 running backs, are off the board,
I think it's time you just kind of work down your receivers list and see who's available at that point, yeah?
Yeah, we haven't taken DeAndre Hopkins in a Yahoo draft or, one of the live drafts that we've done for you guys. So it'd be interesting to kind of get that starting point. But I wouldn't be upset there either. So luckily, we're looking at probably either David Johnson or DeAndre Hopkins. We'll be more than happy with both. But we'll just see how it has to shake out. Draft starting here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year.
Party
just
time.
Just kidding. Happy draft time.
It'll be interesting. So we got 1 minute clocks here for each pick for each player. So usually things do move pretty fast paced. And being at the number 6 pick, we're never going to have a real long stretch between, where we're picking up next. So it's always going to have our heads in the game here.
Yeah, exactly. We see the first place guys taking his time. Up until this week, we've been pretty confident in who our first pick would be. We've seen Ezekiel Elliott at different spots, but we've loved Zeke. Now with some of the training camp holdout news and with some of the news that Jerry's talking about, it's a little intimidating knowing that Zeke may or may not play, and the team seems to be acting like they're ready to move on without him.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting situation that has to be monitored closely. And another reason, as you said, we want to lock down those rankings, get all this news happenings at training camp out. But yeah, it doesn't really look that good. It's not encouraging from what Jerry Jones is saying. I'll definitely agree with you there. But nonetheless, Elliott off the board at number 1 overall here, so this guy's clearly not scared. Elliott's a great talent. David Johnson is off the board at this point. McCaffrey is the name who has been slipping. So Hopkins, there he is, David, in that scenario, just as you mentioned. DeAndre Hopkins is the top of our board and also the top of the Yahoo board here.
Yeah, so as we talked about, these guys that we like at running back are gone. We don't really feel like reaching for Melvin Gordon, reaching for Nick Chubb or Bell. At this point, you got to go to the guy who didn't drop a pass last year. DeAndre Hopkins is an incredible talent, and as long as Watson's healthy, we're going to see a lot of targets his way. There's no reason to think that he's not going to be the number 1 guy. A lot of people like Devontae Adams, it's tough to argue that being Aaron Rodgers' number one dude, but DeAndre Hopkins for now is that dude.
Absolutely, absolutely a solid pick. DeAndre Hopkins, he's kind of proven matchup proof, and no matter what status Deshaun Watson is in, he seems to be putting up the numbers. So can't go wrong there. We do have a short turnaround, just 6 picks until we go here. The question is, we've got that solid wide receiver. Do we want to take that running back here before some of those tier 2 guys are gone? Or do we double up with a back-to-back tier 1 wide receiver if, say a Michael Thomas is on the board or a Juju Smith-Schuster?
Well, Joe Mixon is a guy we really like. We see him there at 16, and it may be to our benefit he's ranked so low on these Yahoo draft boards because it may be possible for us to snag him. And so we're going to have our eye on Joe Mixon and hope that he's going to be available for us. I mean, James Conner is a great talent, but we saw him kind of tail off at the end of last year. Jalen Samuels has hopped in, shown that he's a capable back. They're going to be spreading the ball around there in Pittsburgh. Mixon may be our guy here.
Yeah, I agree. Mixon's definitely the target. If Mixon does go off the board, we would probably looking at Dalvin Cook or Damian Williams. I believe we have Williams slightly higher than Cook on our rankings. Those would be the top-rated running backs. But obviously, we still have some very high-rated receivers left in Odell Beckham and Juju Smith-Schuster, as well as some tight ends there.
Yeah, so we saw Connor go off the board and Gordon just off the board here. So Chubb, Mixon are kind of the last of those 2 guys I think that we may take with this next pick. According to our rankings, we'd be reaching a little bit to go with, a Cook or a Williams. And so as much as we came into the draft, looking for those top-tier running backs, you got to go with the value that you have. And if Odell Beckham's going to be sitting right here, we got to take him.
Yeah, and with Joe Mixon off the board, I agree with you 100%. Odell Beckham, we still have he's the first wide receiver out of that elite tier. We only have him outside that elite tier just with the new quarterback, new situation, but we expect him to just put up amazing numbers. I say we solidify it, get 2 of the top wide receivers in the game right now. Man, I'm happy about that.
Right? Looking over at our team, having DeAndre Hopkins, having Odell Beckham Jr., man, that's a pretty solid foundation. So we've talked a little bit in our other live videos about how running back, points deteriorate as the rounds go on, and we really do believe that. There's no real substitute for these top-tier guys. But that being said, if we're smart with our next 2 or 3 picks, we're not going to be suffering at that running back position.
I agree. Yeah, the value we just made up for Odell Beckham, I think we're just going to make up for the running backs we get with these next picks. Still some guys we like out there, too, with, Marlon Mack. A big name like Todd Gurley's still out there.
Derrick Henry's on the board. Looking down a little bit further, you got Aaron Jones, Leonard Fournette, who we're not as high on this year. We know what he's capable of, but there's just no telling with that kind of injury history and how things are going to shake out there in Jacksonville. Kerryon Johnson's a guy we're high on. And so looking down the list, we feel that we're going to be able to get a couple values. And even if we have to do a running back by committee, we're going to snag 4 of what we call our top 5 tier, running backs. And so we have all of our running backs grouped into 5 tiers. We believe as long as you have 4 running backs out of those 5 tiers, you're going to be okay. You can make the season. So having these stud wide receivers is a great way to start.
Yeah, and we just want to welcome some of you guys that are just joining us. We want to be real interactive, so ask some questions if they come up. So who we got so far? We got DeAndre Hopkins with our first pick and Odell Beckham with our second.
Yeah, exactly. The way that the value worked out, we didn't really have a shot at one of those top 5 running backs. Gordon scaring us a little bit with the holdout situation, and so DeAndre Hopkins fell to us at 6. On the retro round, we were able to scoop up Odell Beckham, and that just worked out perfectly. And so we think that having that solid core of wide receivers, these next 2 or 3 picks, we're going to be looking at some running backs, and there's going to be a couple values here. I think if you guys stick around, you're going to see you can take 2 of those top, 1-tier wide receivers and still end up with a solid running back core.
Yeah.
So as we pick next, Damian Williams is still on the board here.
I think that's our guy.
A little bit of concern coming out of training camp. With his hamstring, he didn't practice, but we're not that worried about
No,
it.
we still have him in our tier 3 of running backs, so that's still a fairly high tier to get there in one of your starting positions. Tons of upside and opportunity there for Williams.
Exactly. We saw what Kareem Hunt did last year. Is Damian Williams Kareem Hunt? No, he's not. But that offense is going to be killer. They're going to be throwing him the ball. In a PPR league especially, he's going to be worth his weight in gold. So
Yeah, I agree 100%.
third round pick, we're happy with Damian Williams. Fourth round pick coming up very soon. We still see a few guys on the board that we really love. Keenan Allen hasn't been drafted yet. He's a guy we have way above this ADP. He's going to be killing it this year like he does every year. Well, he just went off the board. Looking at some of these wide receivers, tell me who you like.
Well, names like Thielen stand out, Diggs as well. You got Robert Woods for the Rams. Those are kind of the top ones. You see AJ Green as Yahoo's top rated receiver. He's not necessarily our top rated receiver. But the injuries last year, another injury this year. Sure, he could be back by week 2, 3, hopefully by week 4. But there's just a question mark there with such good talented players around him and still available. So if you're asking me what receivers I like, it would be Stephon Diggs, then Thielen, then Robert Woods. Ertz is still on the board. I would say Diggs right after him. If we wanted to go running back, Aaron Jones just went off the board as well. So I think it looks like, if in my estimation, we're probably going to be doing Kerryon Johnson. He is still available. What do you think about Kerryon Johnson with this next pick and the next one to come after that?
Well, definitely in the pick coming after this. If we were able to get him with that 5th pick, I think that'd be amazing. Is that a little bit of a reach here? Let's consult our rankings and see where we have Kerryon Johnson. With the news of Theo Riddick being thrown out of Lions camp apparently, that's going to increase his rankings a little bit. And so although we initially had Kerryon in our 40s as well, we think he's initially going to move into the 30s, probably with an average of a 4th round ADP as soon as all the dust settles from everyone realizing he's going to get all those targets that Riddick had. But looking at the board, I mean, it's a chance to...
Ertz actually is our highest rated player, I believe, on our board right now. I guess the question is, do you want to go for an elite tight end this early or kind of solidify your spots? I would be looking receiver here. Since we have our starting receivers, I think Ertz might be the play.
I think Ertz is the play. We have him, ranked well above this, and getting him with the 35th overall pick, I think is well above his ADP. And so although we weren't necessarily looking at a tight end, there for the last of our elite tight ends, we think that Ertz is, going to give you 100 receptions.
Yeah, Ertz, I'm really excited about that one. Still getting one of those tier 1 tight ends, so just another tier 1 player to add to our roster. The Raiders rookie, he's asking about Josh Jacobs. Certainly another running back to look at with this next pick, along with Kerryon Johnson. I personally like Johnson a little bit better. I think in general we have Jacobs a little bit lower than the consensus.
I like Josh Jacobs this year in standard leagues better than I do PPR leagues. It's going to be a little difficult because Jalen Richard is still there catching all the passes, and he caught about 70 last year. So Josh Jacobs may not have the pass reception value of some other running backs like Kerryon Johnson will around this tier.
Yeah, I agree. Kerryon Johnson, especially with the gap at that second running back starter position, I believe would be a solid pickup. Unfortunately, he did just go off the board, so we will definitely have to look elsewhere for that.
But appreciate the question. You guys keep them coming. We're here to answer all of them. We saw somebody ask about Allen Robinson this year. Robbie, what do you think about Allen Robinson?
Well, he had such a great rookie season in Jacksonville, and everybody thought he was just going to blow up. Since then, he's been plagued with injuries. Last year, he came back a little bit. We saw, I think, a glimpse of what he could do with Trubisky in that Chicago offense. I look for him to have, a fairly good year this year. I would say I would want him maybe in my wide receiver 2 slot at best. I wouldn't want him to take him as my first receiver. But I definitely think there's a lot of upside with that, that new look Chicago offense.
I agree. We saw them have some success in Chicago there last year. I think the offense is trending upwards. We like a lot of those guys on Chicago's offense this year. not necessarily over their counterparts on other teams, but when it comes to their ADP, we feel like they are being a little undervalued with that whole, plague of Chicago's offense being so bad for so long. So we think this year they've got some upside. There's a lot of hope in the rookie Montgomery. Cohen's still there catching passes. We've seen him find some success there with their slot receiver, and Allen Robinson's going to do well. I think he'll give you probably 75 receptions, probably right around that range. So he's not going to be, like Robbie said, your wide receiver one, 100 receptions, 10 touchdown guy, but he's going to put up consistent numbers for you.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at this list, what I've kind of been silent here. I've been looking at Andrew Luck and comparing, looking back at our rankings, seeing where we have him and what kind of strategy we have about him. Ideally, I believe we would like to have our second running back here. I'm almost in a position to just say wait it out and just take the best value here and just kind of throw committee at it. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that with this next pick, I think that we go possibly running back. Let's consult our rankings real quick. As we see here, Kenyon Drake, David Montgomery, some of these guys may be available with the next pick. Do we want to go ahead and...
Our highest rated we have player on our overall board right now is Julian Edelman.
Okay. I think that his broken thumb shouldn't keep him out for long. As we see Edelman here, we talked about Luck in our initial rankings. Is that something that we want to do? We got 10 seconds.
Yeah,
left.
I mean, I would say so. We could get another a tier 1 guy, another tier 1 player to start in our starting lineup. It's interesting. I think this draft is actually really interesting because we're kind of not necessarily going off philosophy, but just going off how these previous drafts have gone for us. But I still think we're getting all the value there.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not following necessarily the blueprint, which just goes to show that sometimes you have to be flexible according to value. We didn't expect Odell to be there with our second pick, and that kind of threw our whole draft process off. We were hoping to go, okay, let's get a few running backs next. But then we saw Ertz fall to the 35th pick, way below his ADP. We saw Andrew Luck fall in a sweet spot where, honestly, we wouldn't be surprised if he's the number 1 fantasy quarterback this year. We have him as the number 2 going into the season. And so now we're at a position where we almost do have to start taking some of these running backs. But it looks like we're going to be able to get Kenyon Drake, David Montgomery, some of these guys we thought about reaching for the last pick, but took a chance on thinking they'd be here now.
Yeah, and both those names you just said, David Montgomery and Kenyon Drake, we do have in our Tier 5 list, which is before our backup, so we definitely see value in these players. David Montgomery is the highest-rated running back on our board, so if we wanted to go running back, that is where we would go. Is James White, that's always a player that's sneaky for us, because we really like a player like James White. He is still available as well. So I think Montgomery's here with, you keep James White in the back of your mind perhaps.
We actually have James White ranked ahead of all of the running backs you will see on the screen right now. That's a little draft tip for you. You'll see in our guide. James White's going to kill it. He's going to have 70 receptions. Who cares if Damian Harris comes in and runs between the tackles? Who cares if Rex Burkhead steals a few third down plays? James White, we doubt him last year. Mm-hmm. We're doubting him this year. And the fact that he's being taken behind Tariq Cohen, taken behind some of these guys we're seeing is just crazy. James White's going to be a top 15 running back this year.
Agreed.
But like we said, for now, we're going to take David Montgomery because we believe that we can hopefully outsmart the Yahoo draft board here and get him with our 7th pick since you don't see him down projected around 78 on their boards.
Yeah. Only another fantasy drafter probably looking at the Two Shoe Sports draft guide would think to take James White here before we're going to eyeball him. Especially with a lot of these high stake receivers still on the board. You got Tyler Lockett, a guy we like, Mike Williams, Julian Edelman is another player that we have pretty high. So
there's Edelman off the board. Robbie mentioned Mike Williams. Tyrell Williams is out of San Diego this year. That leaves the door open for Mike Williams to really step in and be that number 2 guy. We saw his talent last year. He's only going to get better. Across from Keenan Allen, one of the league's best, he's going to be seeing some of the easier coverage. Phillip Rivers is still the man. While Hunter Henry, there's great expectations for him this year, Mike Williams is going to be the solidified number 2 there in San Diego.
I'd be surprised if he's still on the board for those reasons, but we will just kind of have to see how it shakes out. Going back to our running back rankings, it looks like, yeah, James White's still up there. Rashad Penny, Chris Carson, that would be the next 3 on the running back board. When we take a peek over at the receivers.
Thank you for joining us, guys. We're doing a live fantasy draft. If you have any questions, just let us know. It's a little bit early to hopefully be doing your main drafts, but it's always good to get a few practice ones in just to see what it feels like to draft at different spots. Today we're going at number 6, and so we were able to get a pretty interesting team. We feel great with our lineup so far. We're about to come up with our 7th pick in the draft, and we're looking at running backs on the board, which out of the ones that we see, we're talking about James White, which although he's further down on the draft board, I'd be nervous we wouldn't get him with that 8th pick, and we have him ranked well above the ADP that we're about to take him at. So if we can get him with the 66th pick, we're going to take James White.
Yeah, and we'll just have to see how it shakes out. I'm guessing that he is going to be available, and I'm with you. We both have him much higher than you see him on the Yahoo board here, so that just works into our favor tremendously. So I think that pick is going to be locked up. We would hope. So at that point, we have some depth at running back with 3. We still just have the 2 receivers, albeit high-profile receivers. I still like some of the names coming up, like Christian Kirk you see here, Will Fuller, Jarvis Landry. So a lot of options. These are some exciting mid-rounds. This is really where you solidify your team and improve your knowledge as a drafter.
Exactly. Here we are, 3 picks till our turn. The running back we've got our eye on is still there, and so we're just keeping our fingers crossed we're going to be able to get James White with this pick.
It's interesting that A.J. Green is hanging around. People must be scared of those injuries.
They are, and although he's not expected to miss, but I've heard it maybe even back by week 2. It's just with his history, people are concerned. Because with A.J. Green, especially with those toe-foot problems, those are things that can get aggravated very easily. And so he may be back by week 2, but he may be out by week 4.
Exactly.
Back by 8 and
Big
out
risk.
by 11. And so it's just really tough to watch. Because A.J. Green is the top 5 wide receiver talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
If he was healthy, even with Andy Dalton, he's just as good, as some of these other guys. He's on the downhill of his career, I'd say, as he's getting on up there. But he'd be a Julio if he had Matt Ryan.
Exactly. He was for the longest time there.
So James White's still here. No thoughts. That's who we're taking. That James White pick makes us feel a lot better about our running back situation. Having Damian Williams, David Montgomery, James White, the rookie, a little bit of a question mark, but they got rid of Jordan Howard. Cohen is not an every down back, so somebody's going to have to carry the ball. We think that's going to be the rookie. And then James White in a PPR league is a monster. And so now with the 8th pick, we have all of our starters. So now we're starting to build our bench. We feel we're in a great position. We're just going to be probably looking at the best values. Since this Yahoo League uses a wide receiver, running back, or tight end flex, we probably won't be looking for a tight end as that flex spot. But we do have the flexibility to look for a running back or a receiver, just whoever's at the top of our board. So if we go to our list, Robbie, who's our number 1 right now?
Right now, Tyler Lockett is the guy that sits right on top of our board. Right behind him, we have Cooper Kupp. And then, let's see, following not too far behind him is Robbie Anderson. So their board pretty much mirrors ours as far as availability. Now, our rankings, we do have Lockett, many spaces ahead of theirs, but it looks like we're going to get one of those 3 who are at the top of our list here.
Lockett gets slept on. We've talked about it in other videos. And thanks for joining us. Let us know if you have any questions. As we're about to take our 8th pick, we see Tyler Lockett here. As we just mentioned, he gets slept on a lot. Last year, 965 yards, 10 touchdowns. What other 10 touchdown guys are still on the board? him and Calvin Ridley, both in that club. A lot of doubt on Calvin Ridley's side, and I see why. Julio Jones is the man. Freeman's back. What's going to happen? Was it a fluke? Was it just, nobody thought he was going to be there? Defenses weren't prepared for him. Tyler Lockett was Russell's favorite target throughout the season, and he's going to remain that through this year. So he doesn't have another number one taking the ball from him. So we really like Tyler Lockett this year.
Yeah, and even if you look at DK Metcalf in Seattle, I think if anything, that's just going to help Lockett out. If Metcalf can be any kind of a threat, it's going to open things up for a much more consistent numbers from Lockett. You may see Metcalf get even like a 3-touchdown game, but the consistency is going to be at Lockett. He's going to be your guy there, and we really like that pick. So awesome job solidifying that depth there, wide receiver.
And there's a reason that people don't take rookie wide receivers the same way they take rookie running backs. Rookie wide receivers don't produce the same in the NFL. The defensive backs they're going against are stronger, faster than what they faced in college. So rookie wide receivers, far and few between, come out and have a breakout season like we see from Saquon Barkley, from some of these guys. And so even as talented as DJ Moore is, we saw the struggles he had in Carolina last year. So I'm not concerned about DK Metcalf.
No,
if you want to get him as a sleeper pick late round, that's one thing. But if you're going to be, concerned that Lockett is going to have less targets because of Metcalf, quite the contrary.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be concerned about that.
Absolutely not. Yeah, it's only going to be a positive if he can do anything. So now let's go back to our rankings. Looking at our top available, we see Cooper Kupp, Robbie Anderson, Dante Pettis. Would be next on our board. They got him a little lower here. If we're looking at running backs, we've got Rashad Penny, I believe, then Latavius Murray as our top available. So we've got, first of all, let's get this out of the way. With Tier 1 quarterback in Andrew Luck and a Tier 1 tight end in Zach Ertz, we're not going to be looking to draft another quarterback or tight end throughout this draft.
No, not at all. There's no reason. No need to take a backup, so that's out of the question. We saw Cooper Kupp go off the board. Robbie Anderson, Fuller. They're saying Fuller there in training camp. It's looking like he's fully recovered. Fuller recovered from his injury. We'll have to see what's going to happen if Watson can stay healthy. And then Fuller's kind of in that Chris Godwin category of number 2 guys who have a lot of talent but aren't going to give you number 1 numbers. Christian Kirk here we see slipping. Larry Fitzgerald's been the man there in Arizona forever. This is the year Christian Kirk surpasses him. They've got a new quarterback. Christian Kirk's a young guy, new offense. There's much respect for Larry Fitzgerald in that system, in that organization, but they don't owe him anything. They don't owe him the 150 targets he's gotten every year. He's shown that he's not really capable of being your number 1 wide receiver. You're not going to win a Super Bowl with Larry being your guy anymore. And so Christian Kirk, we think he's going to be Kyler's favorite target. He's a beast. Last year, while he underproduced a little bit, Arizona's offense in general was just shite. And so we think that Christian Kirk's somebody, especially when you're looking pick 9, pick 10, if you need that wide receiver depth, he's somebody capable of being a wide receiver 1 by the time it's all said and done.
Absolutely. So if we look at our board, Robbie Anderson is our highest rated player. He is Yahoo's highest rated player as well. I think that's an equation for a draft pick.
That's who we're taking. We don't really look at these Yahoo boards much other than just to select who we're going to pick. We go by our rankings, and we suggest that by the time you go into your final drafts, whatever it is your most important drafts are, the ones you do with your friends that you talk trash in, the ones you do, against your dad's friends where you can see them at Thanksgiving and, tell them to stick it. Whatever draft it is that you wake up on Sundays and start praying to the fantasy gods that, that they do well. In that draft, you need to be careful, precise, engineered, and you need to wait until after all of this nonsense shakes out from training camp, after all of these holdouts are done, after everything. And then go into that draft with a list other than whatever platform you're drafting on.
Yeah.
So many times guys get locked into taking, Sammy Watkins because he's at the top of the draft board. If you have your own list, You may think, oh, I've got Cortland Sutton ahead of Sammy Watkins or Christian Kirk ahead of him. So don't fall into the temptation of, seeing a guy there at the top of the list and think you have to take him just because he has a high number next to his name on the Yahoo draft platform.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you want to make up your own mind, and if nothing else, bring our list in with whatever you're doing, just to have something, another reference point. And plus, we've got some awesome killer notes here, and pretty much a pick-by-pick guide to kind of help you through. So we've got 2 now until our turn here.
Talking a little bit about our last pick, Robbie Anderson. We think that Jets offense is just going to improve. They've got Levy on there to take some of the pressure off, and I know he's got a few seconds. But, Darnold showed promise. They've got a few other weapons there with Herndon. As I mentioned, Bell. I think that Robbie Anderson, who's shown he's a killer deep field threat, is going to do a lot better this year with a more consistent situation there with the Jets. So it's our pick. Who's at the top of our board?
Well, let's see. I'm looking here. It looks like it is going to be Christian Kirk. Is he available? He's been drafted.
If Kirk was taken.
Curtis Samuel.
Curtis Samuel. We like him.
Yeah, we have him. This would be a 4-pick value. We've got him just right at number 1 on our overall rankings. We're drafting him here at 94. A guy that we kind of like to be, DJ Moore is so talented, and obviously we think he's going to do big things. We like Samuel to kind of do equivalent numbers and kind of see a Diggs-Thielen situation as far as maybe not the ceiling there, but as far as the kind of consistency between the two.
Exactly. We saw DJ Moore come in, and while he has all of the athletic talent, great hands, Curtis Samuel is more consistent. And, ask Jerry Rice, what's that get you? A lot of times talking about the best wide receiver, yeah, there's Randy Moss and Terrell Owens, these freak athletes, but Jerry Rice wasn't, 6'5", 230 pounds. He just knew how to run a route. He was consistent. He was always there. And the word out of camp is that Samuel is that consistent guy.
Yeah.
And so that can be just as big as, speed or anything else when it comes to a quarterback's trust with his wide receiver. And so we really like Curtis Samuel. Having him there on our bench with Lockett gives us 2 amazing wide receivers that we can reach out to if we need to for a bye week or an injury. And then Robbie Anderson as well. We have 3 great wide receivers sitting there, all of them capable of putting up tremendous points. We'll probably be looking at some running back depth. As we kind of peek at our roster and our bench, we're pretty well solidified there in wide receivers. So some running backs we see that we like. Darrell Henderson's there on the board. Miles Sanders. A few of these rookies are starting to pop up with question marks. Darrell Henderson, if Todd Gurley was healthy, would pretty much be a scratch, but they drafted him for a reason. He was a beast in college. You don't just waste a high-round pick on a guy if you don't want him to play. And so we think Darrell Henderson's going to get that chance this year.
Yeah, 100% there. Like you said, all the question marks about Gurley and Henderson, young NFL rookies that just don't have a lot of hits and wear and tear on them do seem to be pretty successful, and we look for Henderson to kind of get in and get some of that role.
And then Miles Sanders in Philadelphia, they got Howard, but once again, they drafted an incredible running back, and there's no question Miles Sanders is the best running back there in Philadelphia. The only question is, how long is it going to take him to learn pass blocking? How long is it going to take him to pick up schemes, learn defenses? And so while he may not be the starter at the beginning of the year, by week 6, 7, 8, Miles Sanders can pay huge dividends, which is why he is around pick 12 here. But that's just the battle you're taking with some of these guys. So you don't want to look at Sanders if you need maybe someone to play the first week or 2 of the year. But if you can afford to draft a guy you don't need for a while, then that's where the Sanders and the Hendersons really come into play.
A name I do want to point out is Ronald Jones II. He is actually our highest rated running back over the other 2. Right here, according to the Two Shoe Sports ratings, it could be one of those value situations where we might think he's there on the backside. But if we will go running back here, we say Jones, then Sanders, then Henderson is what we've currently got, without any updates.
Yeah, that Tampa Bay running situation is a mess. But we do like Ronald Jones this year. We'll kind of like. We kind of like Ronald Jones this year.
He's got I would say he has a firmer foothold on his position than the other 2, that we were looking at, Miles Sanders and Darrell Henderson.
There was some word that Tampa Bay was going to maybe trade for Duke Johnson. Hasn't happened yet as of now. And so right now they're left with Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones. Peyton Barber was the most inefficient back in football last year, but yet they didn't draft a running back, or so far they haven't gotten another running back, which means they must like what they see in Ronald Jones. Last year he's a rookie, so he did have his struggles. Anyone who tried to run the ball for him last year had their struggles, but we're just kind of taking a gamble here that with the passing offense being what it's going to be with the healthy Jameis and Evans and Godwin, that they're not going to be able to cram the box, and maybe Jones can get some looks.
I would say, looking at our next pick, Miles Sanders is still there, the guy that we were just talking about. When you're looking for your boom or bust guys, filling out your roster, that might be a guy that we would consider. Currently at the top of our running back list. If we were going to our receiver list, I believe we have Larry Fitzgerald at the top of that, but we're going to go Sanders. We like his upside there in Philadelphia.
Exactly. That offense is going to be potent. The last time we saw a healthy Carson Wentz, he was the undoubted NFL MVP. There before he got hurt going into the playoffs, Carson was killing it. Not much has changed there in Philly. They've got a very potent offense with a good offensive line, and we think as soon as Miles Sanders gets caught up and gets that chance, he's going to be a beast.
With this next pick coming around here, I see a lot of names. Some, really sleeper players we like. Anthony Miller, Trey Burton possibly. Valdez Scantling down there. But I think it might be time to peek at the defenses and see if one of our top-rated ones is available. If so, I think we may look at them here. If not, we may wait. We do have Houston inside of our top 5, so that would be our highest-rated defense currently. It's really up to us to see the value with the other players available at the time.
Exactly. We really like the Chargers this year as far as the defense goes. If they were available, we may be looking at them here, but there's still a few on the board we really like, including, Minnesota's defense just went, but Houston, Cleveland, New Orleans, New England, we believe all those are going to be pretty good defenses this year. And so, Cleveland just went off the board too.
So it's a round of defenses.
It's a round of defenses. One goes, and it's like fireworks at that point. It's just chain reaction.
So, yeah, I would say we look Houston here if they are available. If not, like I said, we'll just kind of have to reconsider at that point.
Some other names we like, though. Robbie mentioned Valdez Scantling there out of Green Bay. The word is he's going to be the number 2. Geronimo Allison is projected ahead of him and has an higher ADP. But if Valdez Scantling is going to be solidified as that number 2, which means he's on the field, 95% of the time for Aaron Rodgers, we imagine his ADP is going to take off quite a bit. So our pick to draft, Houston is available. Do we like Houston over, some of these other guys up here?
Well, I think it really just depends. Let's look at our overall team real quick there as far as our bench depth goes. So we've got the 3 receivers. We have the 3 running backs. I'm not really excited. I would go Houston here. They're the last of our top 5 and really the last, I think, of our defenses that we really, really like. They do have some ballers down there with J.J. Watt. He's always going to be dangerous, and some other guys. If we still needed a receiver, I do like Fitzgerald. I like Anthony Miller a lot. A lot of the same reasons we talked about with Robinson as far as the opportunities with Trubisky getting better. I like about Anthony Miller and his opportunities. But we are pretty deep at receiver, with Lockett, Anderson, and Samuel already on the bench. So I think Houston was the right play there.
I agree. So now we've got about 8 picks until our turn. And a lot of these guys we were looking at are probably going to be here. The Valdez Scantlings of the world. N'Keal Harry, guy out of New England. We're pretty excited about him this year. N'Keal Harry. That gives me every time. But
now he is definitely an exciting prospect.
Yeah, we don't see the Patriots take wide receivers in drafts. We really don't. Most of the time they wait for another team to train them, and then they just sign those guys for a year or two, and lease them and put them right back out. But they took N'Keal pretty high in the draft, and so that goes to show what they think of him. They got Brady a few more weapons. taking Damian Harris, it seems like they're making a push, and they maybe realize, their window's closing. They probably have a year or two left to get another Super Bowl, and unlike typical Belichick, we're seeing them give Brady some weapons there on the offense to work with. So while they lost Gronk, we think it's going to be same old New England this year as far as what Brady and the boys are going to be up to.
Yeah, and seeing as how we don't have to fill out our roster for anything other than the boomer bust high flyer types here, I think that is a good pick to go for. Someone that could potentially blow up. Fitzgerald for me is not that player. He's kind of a higher floor, low ceiling guy. And on your last pick or your last few picks these late rounds, those are the type of players, you kind of want to get your solid players earlier and avoid those. You want to go ahead and get your high flyer guys. Valdez-Scantling, he's going to be lining up opposite Devontae Adams there in Green Bay. We know Rodgers is just a offensive monster in Green Bay. Help me out, David. What can we say about Valdez-Scantling?
Valdez-Scantling, yeah, as I was mentioning him, it looks like he's going to, get the nod as the number 2, and so I think his ADP is going to rise quite a bit over Geronimo Allison, as much promise as he's shown. With our pick here,
officially, it looks like Anthony Miller is our highest rated player, the wide receiver there in Chicago.
And we do like Anthony Miller.
Let's go ahead and lock it up. A lot of upside there. And one of those boomer bust types. By potential breakout, I see.
Definitely. Trubisky's only going to show improvement. That Chicago offense as well, we talked to him a little bit earlier with Allen Robinson. But we really think that Anthony Miller shows a lot of promise there as that slot guy to hopefully break into the 70-80 reception range and maybe give us 800 yards and a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, and filling out your bench, that's really what you could hope for too. So if he was any better than that, he wouldn't have been your last pick,
Exactly. This is a 10-team draft, as we mentioned. This is also Yahoo, which has one less round than ESPN. If you guys are in a 12-team draft or ESPN and you're looking at some other rounds for some players on down the list, we mentioned Damian Harris a little bit ago. I actually like him in New England. This year he can run between the tackles. We saw what Michelle was able to add to him last year, and Michelle's shown he has some knee injuries, and so we're not really praising Damian Harris as a starting running back right out of the gate, but he's a guy who you can hold on to and can be that sleeper pick for you. Also on down this list, Dante Moncrief. It looks like he's going to be the number 2 over James Washington. He's taking all the first team reps there in Pittsburgh. So people have been waiting to see who's going to be that guy, and it looks like it's going to be Moncrief. There's been a few, stories coming out of training camp. A lot of them seem, like Derrick Henry's injury doesn't seem too bad. AJ Green, once again, supposed to be back by week 1, 2. So none of them so far are too bad, but, we're just keeping our fingers crossed that, we're not going to see one of these big-time fantasy guys come across with an ACL or, major injury.
You hate to see it. It seems like there's one every year before the season starts or right there in that first week, and you just really hate to see it.
Maybe this is just the year of the holdouts.
Yeah.
With Gordon and Zeke and,
and
these guys are like, I'm not getting injured in training camp. I'm going to go to Mexico.
Right? It's an interesting trend, and that's probably a topic for another video, but an interesting trend on these holdouts. And Le'Veon Bell really set the tone last year, just not giving in and not breaking down and saying, I'm not going to play, Yep. And he did it.
Our turn's next. When it comes to kicker, there's really only one kicker you should be looking at this year. That's Brett Maher out of Dallas.
Yeah, all the way.
We are Cowboys fans, and so maybe a little biased, but, plays in a dome. Like it. Cowboys like it.
High scoring offense, should be a 12 to 11, 11 to 12 win team.
Yeah, they struggle a little bit there in the red zone, especially if Zeke's not going to be there. They're going to struggle a lot there in the red zone. That could be a lot of chances for our man Brett there in Dallas.
We'll go ahead and draft him, get him off the board. Another successful draft, an interesting draft, David. Well, I am really excited about this one because of the Hopkins and Beckham for our first 2 rounds. It's a path we haven't typically done this season yet. but it's not. I mean, it's definitely one I'm excited about. And we get the tier 1 in Luck, the tier 1 in Ertz. Just a lot to like over there.
Yep, scrolling around some of the teams as the draft is finalized. And, while there's some good teams out there, I think we're pretty happy with what we got.
Yeah, I am too.
Looking at the roster, Andrew Luck, our number 2 fantasy quarterback heading into the season. We have some killer wide receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham Jr., along with some of the guys on the bench, but they stand alone, kind of in their own tier. Damian Williams, David Montgomery, James White, Ronald Jones, Miles Sanders. Our running back depth, running back position probably isn't overall where we'd like for it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But not to make excuses, when we can come up with Ertz, when we can come up with 2, tier 1 wide receivers like we did, come up with Andrew Luck, and still fill out with plenty of depth, I'm pretty happy with where we ended up.
100%, I am too. So once again, we just want to remind everybody to subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, leave a like on the video. Definitely stay on the tune for more content. And
yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. If you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter, shoot us a DM at 2Shoe Sports. Make sure to like or subscribe if you found any benefit from this. Keep an eye out as we're bringing you more videos, and especially next week as we bring you the final draft guide for the season. So until then, peace out.